Emergency warning. Date, 18th of April 2032, 21:17. Region, global. Priority, Omega. Effective immediately. Avoid all direct contact with precipitation. Remain indoors. Secure entry points. Do not allow rainwater to touch exposed skin. Further instructions pending.
The message crawled across every screen on Earth. News tickers, smart fridges, wrist displays. Before half the population could finish dinner. No one had ever seen an Omega priority before. There was no accompanying press conference, no scientific explainer, no grainy footage from a disaster zone. Just that terse directive and an institutional hush thick enough to choke on. The Farrows, Cal, Mara, 17-year-old Nathan and 9-year-old Beth, huddled in their split-level living room in suburban Illinois, ears glued to the TV. Outside, a mid-April drizzle rattled the gutters. Cal muted the screen. The digital crawl still blazed at the bottom. Stay indoors. No exceptions. Must be acid rain, Mara offered, tugging her cardigan tighter even though the furnace hummed. Some chemical spill. Then they'd tell us, Cal said, rubbing the back of his neck. He'd spent 2 tours in Iraq and hated orders with no context. NASA? CDC? Someone should be explaining this. Beth clutched her stuffed wolf. Is the rain alive? No, sweetheart, Mara soothed. But her eyes lingered on the window, where drops wormed down the pane in sluggish streaks. Thicker, darker than a normal drizzle. Almost oily. Nathan snorted. This is classic government fear spam. They'll retract it tomorrow. Cal checked his phone. Cell service held, but every social platform was throttled. No uploads, no live streams. Only the warning banner repeated. He tried to call his brother in Seattle. The line played a pre-recorded loop of the same directive, then dropped. Mara's own phone chimed with a neighbourhood watch alert. City water plants offline pending inspection. Boil existing stores. Do not collect rainwater. A second chime. Schools closed until further notice. Okay, Cal muttered. We treat it like a normal alert. Hunker down until we know more. They sealed the upstairs windows with duct tape and dragged towels against the door gaps. Nathan protested. I was supposed to catch the late showing of Star Voyager with Jen. Tickets are non-refundable. Cal's stare stomped the complaint flat. You heard the order. Nathan retreated to his bedroom, blasting music through headphones. Cal tried not to notice the faint coppery smell filtering through the aircon vents. 2 hours later, the sky outside had turned the colour of old bruises. Lightning pulsed within the cloud deck, but never struck the ground. Instead, each flash illuminated countless glimmering threads falling from above. Too straight, too uniform to be mere raindrops. In the kitchen, Mara siphoned tap water into every pot and bottle. She paused, listening. No patter on the roof anymore, only a soft hissing, like steam escaping a kettle. She cracked the back door, just an inch. The porch light revealed streaks of viscous liquid stretching from gutters to ground. Where it pooled, the grass wilted, curling into black filaments. Mara shrieked and slammed the door. She double-latched the deadbolt. Upstairs, Nathan typed furiously to friends on a hidden message board that still bypassed the throttling. The rumours were flying. The rain was laced with nanobots, alien spores, recombinant parasites. Hashtags blossomed and ran rampant. Hashtag bloodfall. Hashtag stay dry. Hashtag red April. No one could post photos. The networks wouldn't allow it. Jen wrote, "My cousin dared her boyfriend to run outside in Brooklyn. He's back, but now he won't speak. He just sits in the tub shaking. His skin looks patchy." Nathan's stomach fluttered. Another friend posted coordinates to a clear zone in rural Indiana. Nathan hesitated, then closed his laptop. Dad was paranoid. And Jen was still at the multiplex, his ticket unused. How bad could drizzle be? He opened his closet, rummaged for the poncho from last summer's music festival, and stuffed it into a backpack with his phone, charger, and half a joint. He'd text Jen from the driveway, prove the sky wasn't falling, and earn hero points. Downstairs, Beth curled on the couch, drawing walls beneath crescent moons. She frowned at her crayon. The silver tip kept crumbling. She hummed to drown the hiss at the chimney flue. Cal radio scanned shortwave bands on the radio. Nothing but the emergency tone. He sipped black coffee gone cold and stared at the front door, certain he could hear the house's siding crackling, as if tiny mandibles gnawed from outside. Near midnight, Nathan crept down the stairs. Cal and Mara had retreated to their bedroom. Beth's nightlight glowed under her door. Nathan eased the deadbolt back. The gasket suction popped. The night smelled wrong. Swampy, metal sweet. He stepped onto the porch. The air felt strange, like walking through cobwebs. His sneakers stuck briefly to the mat. Strands of translucent goo clung to the rubber soles. Gross! He flicked them off and jogged towards the driveway. Street lamps failed to light. Only the cloud's internal lighting offered glimpses of what was going on. Driveways were glistening. Cars were lacquered in mucus sheen. Lawns had been coated with blackened grass. He texted Jen. "On my way. Mall lot in 10. No response. He unlocked his dented Civic, tossed his backpack inside, and started the engine. Wipers smeared the windshield with gummy trails. Washer fluid did nothing. He leaned out, scraping with his sleeve, when a thud struck the roof. A weighty plop, like raw meat hitting linoleum. Heart racing, Nathan slid back, craning upward. Another plop on the hood. A gelatinous mass oozed across the paint, riddled with hair-thin cilia that writhed gently, tasting the metal. He suppressed a gag. More shapes landed, each time accompanied by the hiss of expulsion from overhead, as though the sky itself was coughing up organs. Nathan slammed the door and threw the car into reverse. The tyres spun, spraying dollops in all directions. A tendril slapped the windshield, suctioning to the glass. Where it touched, the laminate spiderwebbed. The stereo shrieked white noise. The LEDs on the dashboard flickered. He yanked the gear shift, gunning forward down the lane, but the Civic lurched, its rear traction gone. Warning chimes bonged. The engine whined, then died. The shrill noise from the stereo coalesced into a wet voice, syllables burbling backward. Nathan kicked the door open and leapt onto the street. Houses on both sides sagged under the weight of clinging masses. pulsing sacs of pseudo-flesh, extruding vein-like filaments through gutters into attic vents. Anywhere the goo touched wood or metal, the material bubbled as if it was being digested. Nathan stumbled. He could hardly catch a breath. He sprinted for home, slipping on sticky patches that clutched at his ankles. The porch light flickered. He banged on the door. "Dad! Dad, let me in!" No answer. Behind him, a rippling rustle rose. The sound of thousands of wet leaves sliding over one another. Tendrils unspooled from the nearest sack, seeking to find something to connect with. Nathan hammered harder. "Mum!" Inside, footsteps pounded. The door flew open. Cal's face blanched at the sight behind his son. A curtain of filaments slithered across the street, zeroing on Nathan's voice. Cal yanked Nathan inside, slamming the door. Mara shoved towels at the threshold, but ooze had already wedged between his shoe and the doormat, sizzling. Nathan's pant legs smouldered where mucus strands clung, the fabric dissolving. Cal swept his leg with a fireplace poker. The goo peeled away, leaving a raw welt. Upstairs, Beth screamed. The ceiling above groaned. Something heavy scuttled across the shingles, heading for any gap, any vent. Cal stared at the son he almost lost, struggling to come to terms with what had nearly happened. It seemed there would be no more sneaking out, no more safe rain. The warning had been too late. And outside, the rain that wasn't rain kept falling, building, learning how to crawl. The silence that followed Beth's scream was worse than the sound itself. An airless pause that suggested the house was listening. Cal threw the bolt on the front door, then dragged Nathan into the kitchen, where Mara sliced the leg of his jeans away. The welt had already blistered. His skin pocked with tiny sucking craters that oozed pink foam. Nathan's voice shook. "It burned cold. Felt like ice, then fire." Mara wiped peroxide over the wounds. The solution hissed, turning grey. She met Cal's eyes. The stuff was still eating through whatever it touched. They needed tools and weapons. More space between them and whatever was trying to get in. The basement. Cal guided them down the narrow stairs, while Mara sprinted to fetch Beth. He slung his old tour pack over one shoulder, always half-stocked with emergency gear, and kicked aside paint cans to expose the concrete storm shelter embedded beneath the slab. Behind the drywall, filaments quested through nail holes like white roots hunting water. Nathan steadied a flashlight beam. The wood sagged where tendrils burrowed, disgorging threads that braided into cords. Mara and Beth clambered down the steps. Beth clutched her drawing pad. The silver crayon's tip was now a curling filament, similar to the rain's cilia. Cal yanked the shelter hatch, ushering everyone inside. The steel door slammed as the first vine slapped the jamb. The shelter was a 6x8 concrete cube, stocked decades earlier for tornadoes. Shelves held dusty jars, a hand-crank radio, and Grandad's old welding kit, including 2 tanks of acetylene and oxygen. The radio was no use until, beyond all hope, Mara found a faint emergency channel.
Repeat. Do not rely on structures. Rain compound seeks enclosed spaces. If able, move to open ground no later than sunrise. flame and extreme heat deter growth. Estimated burn through in suburban zones, 90 minutes.
The voice dissolved into white noise. Cal cursed. They want us outside now. Nathan winced as the blistered skin on his shin twitched. From each crater sprouted a translucent hair, growing millimeters by the second. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Mara rummaged for scissors and sliced the sprouts flush. They bled clear. "We get him to the field behind the property," she said. "Torch anything that tries to touch us." A slam rattled the hatch. A wet, resonant boom. The filaments had thickened into ropes, levering against the steel. Concrete dust rained from the ceiling. Cal immediately grabbed the welding kit with no hesitation. The old torch wheezed flame. He handed the spool of welding rod to Mara. "Once I open the hatch, I sweep high. You three dart left. Stay low." Beth whispered. "What about Wolfie?" Clutching the stuffed toy slick with tar. Cal unzipped his pack, swapped it for the flare gun he kept from 4th of July bonfires. "Wolfie's going to help light the way," he said, pressing the bright red flare into her hand. He wrenched the hatch. Ropes of goo slapped inward. Cal lanced them with blue fire. The mass recoiled, charring like burnt sugar. Mara hauled Nathan up the stairs. Beth skittered close behind. The flare gun clenched hard in hers and Wolfie's hands. They burst into the kitchen. Night still reigned, but distant lightning painted the clouds in sickly green pulses. The front windows bulged, black sacks pushing the glass outward. Cal carved a path with a torch, the flame roaring through the darkness. With the door unlatched, they stumbled onto the porch. The yard was unrecognizable, every tree cocooned. The grass matted under a skin of glistening tar that writhed towards the house foundation. Yet the driveway, now drying under a thin wind, showed patches where the ooze had begun to shrivel. "Open ground," Cal rasped, motioning to the bare dirt beyond the barn. 50 yards of sludge separated them. Nathan tried to move, his shin fibers regrowing faster, threading through the cloth of his ripped jeans. He cried out. Mara tore more fabric to keep it from anchoring. Beth struck the flare with shaking thumbs. The red phosphor spluttered, but to their immense relief, caught. The filaments nearest her recoiled from the smoke. They advanced in a tight knot, flare smoke swirling around them. Cal's torch kept a narrow corridor bright. All of a sudden, Nathan's leg buckled. In one swift move, Cal slung him over one shoulder. Every step felt like hours. Halfway across, the ooze shifted tactics. Instead of reaching for ankles, it retracted, pooling into hummocks that rose waist-high. Demonic eyes opened across the surfaces, watching. A low, wet chorus murmured from all directions, echoing through marrow. Cal couldn't make out any words, but it chilled him to his core. It didn't sound natural. Mara fired the flare gun again. The streak arced into the tallest mound, detonating sparks in an enormous explosion. The tar ignited, flames rippling across a grid of unseen veins. Eyes boiled shut in moments. They broke into the field. In an instant, the wind picked up, real wind, skimming the sparse vegetation. The rain ceased, the clouds thinned, and the moon re-emerged. Behind them, The tendrils recoiled, as though they were allergic to open air. Nathan collapsed onto the dirt, panting. The sprouts on his leg crusted into brittle threads, no longer growing. Concern was plastered all over Cal's face. Dawn began to smear orange across the horizon. The family watched as sunlight touched the farmhouse. The tar reacted instantly, bubbling, shriveling into ash that fluttered away like burnt paper. In minutes, the house stood revealed, the boards scarred but intact, as if the night's siege was only a fever dream. Nathan flexed his bandaged leg. The welts were scabbing. Does this mean it's over? A distant siren wailed. Military, not police. Convoys of trucks trundled down the county road, spraying flamethrowers into the ditches. Helicopters beat overhead, loudspeakers blasting new orders.
Evacuate all structures. Report to decontamination zones immediately.
Cal exhaled relief, with his arm around Mara. Beth tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, look." She pointed at the barn. From a shattered loft window, a single tendril unfurled. Pale, almost translucent. It lifted a charred object, Beth's silver crayon, now fused with black ash. The tendril waved it from side to side, almost curious, then slowly retracted inside the barn's shadows. Cal aimed the torch, but Mara stilled his hand. Sunrise light dappled the barn boards. The tendril retreated faster, like breath drawing in. Another hour of sunlight would sterilize it. They turned towards the road, ready to flag the approaching convoy. But Nathan hesitated. His wounded leg tingled again, this time pleasantly, not painfully. He pulled away the gauze. Beneath, tiny silver hairs had sprouted anew, but rather than oozing, they absorbed the morning light, refracting it in shimmering hues. "Nate?" Mara gasped. He looked up, his eyes reflecting the same metallic sheen as the crayon shard. A smile crept upon his lips. "Dad? Mum? I can hear them singing." Beth reached for her brother, entranced. The convoy's engines roared closer, but the whistle in the wind was unmistakable now. A harmonic hum, neither menace nor plea, just hungry. Nathan inhaled, his breath condensing into a swirl of silver mist that drifted back towards the barn. "They don't fear the sun anymore," he whispered, his voice echoing with layered tones. Cal raised the torch, terror flooding back to him all at once. Behind them, every black ash flake on the field lifted into the air like floating seeds, catching sunlight, glimmering silver. The dawn breeze carried them across the landscape, towards towns just waking, towards open windows, towards any place the warning had coaxed people out into the reassuring light of day. The emergency broadcast had been right about one thing. No one should touch the rain. But it was the aftermath that humanity should have feared. Beth's flare died with a soft hiss. All that remained was the quiet after dark, now reborn in brilliant morning. And it was everywhere.